It's no surprise that the sages of Judaism and those of Christianity differed in their interpretation of what the Jewish people call Tanakh and what Christians call the Old Testament. In this video, I would like to start with the startling conclusion that the Old Testament and the Tanakh are in fact two different books, which raises the obvious question: is it possible to have a collection of words that are the same but are in fact two different books? I think by the end of this video, you will agree that the answer is a surprising yes. Let me explain, but before I do, please know that the following is based on the writings and speeches of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory. There was a prevailing opinion during the Enlightenment that first we see and then we believe. But this is, in fact, very incorrect. The truth is that we believe and then we see. The mystics of all religions spoke of this from the beginning of time. Scientists have discovered that our perception is in fact bounded by our expectations and beliefs. It's like that joke about Mr. Goldberg who goes to see a psychiatrist and is given photos of the Rorschach test. He's shown the first and is asked what he sees, and he says sex. And then again another photo and he responds again, sex. This happens 5 or 6 more times, and the psychiatrist says, "Mr. Goldberg, I am really sorry, but you have a serious problem. You are obsessed with sex." Mr. Goldberg responds quickly, "No, I am not. Can I help it if you keep showing me all those dirty pictures?" Our thoughts and beliefs directly impact how we view the world. Our thoughts and beliefs directly impact how we view the Bible. Spinoza, for example, believed that God was a force, the first cause, and as such could not speak. So when looking at the Bible, couldn't believe in a God that could or would talk. So the Bible, which purports to contain the actual words of God, had to be a work of man. Wellhausen, the famous German biblical scholar, had a primary interest, and that primary interest, the lens he saw his work through, was history. So his conclusion was that the document was composed by various different authors over time. So Spinoza and Wellhausen saw the text as they expected to see it. One as the word of man, and the latter as a historical document. But before we can explain how I think Christians and Jewish people view this document, it's important to understand how each views revelation. In Judaism, the only religion ever to claim a national revelation where man, woman, and child heard God speaking to them as an entire nation at Sinai, this revelation was in words. Revelation to the Jewish people is in words. It's no wonder that we are known as the people of the book. We are enamored by words. In fact, in the U.S., while we make up only 2.4% of the population, we buy close to 25% of the books. Where does God reveal himself to Christians? The answer is in Jesus Christ, and the biblical scripture's main point, in fact, is to point towards Jesus. But again, to the Jewish people, it is in words themselves. I'd ask you to internalize this. It's an ocean's divide, an incredible distance is between these two viewpoints. Jorge Luis Borges wrote this very interesting little story called Pierre Menard, author of Don Quixote, about this crazy guy, Pierre Menard, who tries to write Don Quixote in exactly the same words as Cervantes. So the ridiculous result is that he's writing this book that is completely anachronistic, using words that aren't even used anymore, and that's the result. So as Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks states in one of his speeches, quote, "Borges is giving us the metaphysical fiction that you can have two books which have the same words, but they are two different books." In Christianity, the Old Testament is seen as prefiguring the coming of a divine Messiah that rescues the world from original sin. There is just no way that that reading is even remotely possible the way we read the text. These are two different books to two different groups of people. While they may contain eternal truths and moral teachings we can agree on, the actual view of what these books are is completely different. Especially for those in biblical apologetics, it's tough to come to terms with, and especially so for those seeking to convert others to their faith by using these books. It's why, for example, that it's almost unheard of for someone steeped in the warm, loving embrace of traditional Torah scholarship to accept Christianity. Now, I'm not here to dissuade you of your interpretations. In fact, seeing it through the lens of Christianity can be very interesting and even valuable to me. My ask is that perhaps it's time for those of traditions that Judaism has birthed to look at the Torah as the people who have turned it over and over, wrestled with it, who never lost hope because they carried what they believed was the very revelation of God with them throughout exile, and was able to hear his voice whenever they needed to. They sacrificed greatly to preserve it letter by letter. Are you curious at all what wonders, solace, and nourishment they found in these words of the Torah to create an eternal nation? Mark Twain observed this with his remarkable insight when he stated, in thinking of how great empires have fallen but the Jewish people persist, he said, "The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal but the Jew, all other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?" The answer should now be obvious. What isn't obvious, it is that it is open to all of humanity.